I'm going to go over 8 ways to improve student comprehension, but this is not an exhaustive list. Consider these reminders of familiar practices or ideas to try out. Before getting to strategies, I want to go over why comprehension is so important. I already mentioned in the video on classroom management that comprehension mitigates classroom management issues. Following the love of the language teaching and learning professions, I'll sum this up with some more C words. First and foremost, comprehension is crucial for effective reasons. When students understand and understand with relative ease, then they feel safe and comfortable. It'll also give them confidence that they can do Spanish. Second, comprehension is communication. It's the interpretive side. Don't expect student participation if they don't have a way to understand you. If the teacher wants to use a lot of the second language to teach content like culture, then students will need good comprehension abilities. At beginning levels, when students can't produce much, comprehension-oriented activities are the main way to create a communicative classroom. Lastly, developing linguistic competence, as opposed to meta-linguistic competence, is dependent on input, which is the language stimuli during listening and reading, but it won't be very helpful if it can't be comprehended. For all the reasons just mentioned, the aim is for students to understand every word, although teachers will more than likely fall short despite their best efforts. Certainly, words won't be processed by our learners for all their grammatical properties, but much of that will have minimal to no impact on comprehension. On that note, the standard textbook syllabus is not ordered by communicative value or comprehension difficulty. So just because metalinguistic rules about past tense or the subjunctive come later in a course, that doesn't mean learners can't be exposed to them right away. Next, let's go over 8 strategies to help us maximize comprehension. The first strategy is to set comprehension, production, and negotiation of meaning as classroom expectations. These are 3 of the 5 rules I reviewed in the classroom management video. It's what we expect students to do, but it's up to us to train them. So they'll need reminders from us to keep their eyes on us. When we want a whole class response and only 3 students respond, it's up to us to remind them that everyone should respond, and then ask the same question again. If nobody responds and all you're getting are puzzled looks, then we remind them to signal us immediately. Depending on the activity, student responses may not be production in the second language. It might be actions or drawings that we expect as a response. Based on these verbal and nonverbal responses, the teacher can make adjustments to ensure more comprehension. The second strategy is to use word walls. I recommend writing the question words and high-frequency verbs on the board at the start of every class. Keywords to that day's activities get added as they come up. I suggest using different colors for the first and second languages, as shown here. The next 3 strategies all have to do with the teacher's speech. At normal speech rates, pauses are not made between most words, which makes word segmentation a struggle. Even when the word can be segmented, word access is slower in learners. So you can usually take however slow you think you're talking and go slower. Eventually, very familiar words can be spoken faster. Comprehension deteriorates pretty quickly by overloading learners with too many new words. This is one of the biggest challenges facing beginning level teachers. Use cognates when you can, but also be aware that sometimes cognates, especially in speech, are not initially recognized by learners. If listening fluency is the goal, then learners need dozens, if not hundreds of repetitions. By communicating with a very restricted set of words, then repetition becomes a natural side effect. Interaction with the teacher is good for a lot of things. As already said in discussing class rules, it helps the teacher know how much is being comprehended. When you can, try to ask first, then describe. For example, when viewing a picture, point and ask questions first. You can also directly check comprehension by asking, "What did I just say?" and get student translation. As a general guideline, students should do something after every 1 or 2 teacher utterances. This way, you're talking with students and not at them. The last three strategies are ways to support comprehension that do not involve using the second language. In this strategy, the first time you use a new word and occasionally as a reminder, you provide a first language gloss. If it's a keyword to the discussion, then add it to the word wall. I prefer to call this glossing because of the stigma surrounding translation. Plus, you're not translating whole sentences. And crucially, most of the time that the word gets used in class, it is not glossed. Gestures are something to use throughout the semester. Choose gestures for the words you use often, like the high-frequency verbs. Here are some of my gestures. For quiere, I put my hand on my heart and I reach. For tiene, I'll cup my hands. And for ba, I'll do the fingers walking across. To help with tense, some teachers will point forward for future, point down for present, and over their shoulder for past. And the last strategy, use visuals. Combine the use of pictures with pointing. Here's where the laser pointer can get some use. A video can be paused and used the same way as pictures. The teacher can also draw as they talk, or a student can draw. For example, the teacher can draw as they summarize a story or an anecdote. Or the teacher might describe a scene while having students draw it. Putting the strategies together is something you get better at with more teaching experience. It's sometimes recommended to focus on learning one or two strategies at a time. Of course, you don't need to do every strategy all of the time, but here's an example of how they work together. With a picture projected, point at a question word on the board, slowly ask a short question that uses familiar words and words that are glossed below the picture, while gesturing the verb and expect responses from everyone. That's all.